all change from what I can see starts with the gray matter between your ears first. When you change your mindset, you change your thinking about something, everything else unlocks, changes, or shuts down. I mean, because you had the opposite is exactly true. So a changemaker is somebody that changes themselves, takes a hero's journey, and starts to create positive changes, visible, measurable changes in their sphere of influence.
Hey, Uncommon Leaders, welcome back. This is the Uncommon Leader Podcast, and I'm your host, John Gallagher. FELIPE Engineer, welcome to the Uncommon Leader Podcast. It's great to have you on the show. How are you today, my friend?
John, I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me on the show. It is a pleasure to be here with you.
I can't wait. I'm so happy that I had a chance to chat with you on your podcast, and I know that by returning this favor here, the listeners of the Uncommon Leader Podcast are going to have a good time. I'm so glad that Doug had connected us and that we've had a chance to chat a little bit more. So let's jump right into this the way I always get first-time guests started, and that's to tell me a story from your childhood that still impacts who you are today as a person or as a leader.
Yeah, and this story, it goes back top of mind right away. It's got to be a story about my dad. My dad was an incredible human being, an amazing leader by all accounts. He's a Hall of Fame, Illinois State Soccer Association Hall of Famer as well. Not for playing, but for being president of a nonprofit soccer league that grew from a couple hundred people to tens of thousands of people under his leadership. And that was, he served as president for over 13 years. And it easily could have been longer, but as a kid, I remember my dad dragging me to all these meetings. I mean, literally against my will. Like a child wants nothing to do with a meeting, right? It wants nothing, and a decent kid. And we were like every other kid. We want to play and have fun and be outside. But every now and then he'd bring me to these meetings, and I'd get to see my dad's leadership style. And I got to see my dad in like really calm situations, really intense situations. And I remember one time I was probably 13 or 14 at the time, and we were at a soccer tournament, and people apparently, John, get very into sports, and sometimes we'll even do betting on sports. I mean, are you aware of this, John?
I'm a little bit aware of that, absolutely.
Yeah, and so some people had some money on a game, and it wasn't going the way they liked, and they were mad, and they wanted to take it out on somebody because they were going to lose a sizable sum of money, and so they wanted to take it out on my dad. And my dad, I remember him being just so calm, and I think we had beer thrown on us, and my dad did not get into a fight, and he just,
oh my gosh,
he had so much grace. The way that he spoke with the person completely disarmed them immediately. And in that moment, I thought, man, there's a lot of stuff about my dad I don't know. I realized, and we had a really good talk on the way home after the day was over. We didn't leave. I mean, my dad's like, mission first, got to make sure everything runs well. There's, at probably in that game, easily 3,000 people on this. It was a series of tournaments that day. So there was a ton of people in and out. And our ride home, John, my dad unpacked all those things about what led up to that event, how to put yourself in someone else's perspective, be empathetic in the moment. And then he also shared like some tips of like how to be this way at the snap of a finger. Like you could just turn it on and turn it off. And I thought, I said, Dad, we need to talk more often. How come we've never talked like this before? He's like, we never had beer thrown on us before. That trigger.
That's true.
That trigger of, almost being in a fight. Like it was close. Like we could have definitely gotten into a fight. And my instinct at 14 was like, protect my dad.
Sure.
I had that instinct, and my dad like held me back, and he's like, there's going to be no fight. I mean, he was just so confident. And I think what it really taught me was leader's mindset, like the mindset you bring into the situations. If you set a couple rules, and this is what my dad really taught me, he's like, set a couple rules for yourself and get really like intimate with those rules so that when situations arise, you just let those rules play, and then you'll show up the way you want to show up, the leader that you want to be, the example you want to be.
FELIPE, I love that too. And again, certainly I love the stories when our family members have been influences on our life and what that means. And when I really listen into what you're saying, and some stories come back to my childhood as well with regards to my dad, and he was an excitable person. He was leading in volunteer groups and things like that as well. And you and I could chat about that for a long time in terms of how that goes. But in listening to what your dad said, is first of all, from a leadership standpoint, especially, it's making that decision before you get into that situation that you're
Right.
not going to learn as you go into making that decision beforehand. And then the second thing I heard, and it's actually a book I read, I think 2 years ago, The Power of One More, was the word equanimity, which I never thought was a real word until I read that book and had to look it up in the dictionary. But having calm in the midst of chaos is such a critical attribute for a leader that can be successful. And that calmness is not necessarily a lack of passion for what's going on, but it's in the ability to be able to handle a stressful situation and get others through that situation as well. And to your point, diffuse or take off the excitement of the other party inside of that conversation. Really cool. No, I appreciate you sharing that. And I guarantee in your role today, that becomes very important. So, Felipe, you're an author, you are a podcast host, and you are a lot of other things. The topic we're here to talk about today is something that is near and dear to your heart, that you're passionate about it, that you have a strength in it, and that you've delivered for a while. And that's the problem solving methodology of Agile or Scrum. And so, in fact, as I listened to your story, I thought about some of the things your dad probably had to do, almost like Agile and Scrum, to be organized for an event like that, to have thousands of people and to work his way through that. But tell me, how did you get into Agile and Scrum methodology? How did you become passionate about that? What was it?
Yeah, it was a complete, workaholic type of existence is what I had. I was one of those 7 day a week working type of folks, and it wasn't for ambition of trying to like get promoted. It was actually never for that. Looking back on it, I was like, wow, I probably could have gotten promoted several times if I would have put some energy that way. Just now as it's striking me that was a missed
Mm-hmm.
opportunity. But it was really just to keep my head above water. I wasn't thriving. I was working in construction project management side right out of school, trained as an electrical engineer, and I felt like a fish out of water in the beginning. And the people I was working with had some really good mentors in the early days, and they were of the mantra, just work harder, and everything will be fine. And that was the
Mm-hmm.
pervading mindset. So I took that work harder to an extreme. And as a young person, first project, you get the short straw, and you automatically are working every Saturday. So that was already, happening. And then by the time I was done with the internship and then working full time, I had gotten to the point where, well, if I work Saturday, what if I work a little bit on Sunday? Maybe I could catch up. But you get into this wave of never catching up. And then many years later, I actually had Bell's palsy in my mid 20s, and Bell's palsy is a type of virus that attacks, and in my case, it attacked the seventh nerve of my face, and it paralyzed my face, and it can only really happen when whatever virus transmission, plus you have to be under high stress. Stress has to be at a certain level so it can even get you. So for all of you listening, just relax. You're going to be fine. Just don't be stressed, and you have no chance. And so doctor said it shows up like a stroke, John. So your face
Mm-hmm.
gets paralyzed. My right eye couldn't even blink. I mean, that's how paralyzed my face was. And the doc's like, you just take 2 weeks off from work, and you'll fully recover. 98% of all people, their face fully recovers. I talked to my dad. My dad's like, yeah, it happened to me twice as a kid, and he's like, I
Wow.
recovered both times. He's like, both times. It happened. Hit him in his 20s. He's like, a lot of people in our family have actually had it, and I never knew. They never talked about it, not one time, because they don't talk about their 20s for some reason. But I went back to work 2 days later, John. So
Ugh.
2 days later, my phone's blowing up. We're running this job downtown Chicago, high profile job. We're right on Michigan Avenue, 6 North Michigan Avenue, beautiful building, historic restoration of the exterior facade. And I'm very intimate in running a lot of the work that's happening. It was a very small team. And so I was like very key player. And my boss is like, are you going to come back? And I said, well, I've got doctor's note for 2 weeks off. He's like, I know. He's like, I know, but if you want to come back, you can come back. So he was very gentle pressure. And I went back. And when I went back, I went right back to working 16 hours a day. So day 3, and I had to wear an eye patch because my eye wouldn't close, and it's not safe to have your eye open all day and night. And so I'm wearing an eye patch. I look like a pirate. And that I look back at that, John, and I'm like, probably on the path to killing myself with so much work. Like a heart attack at work, not uncommon. Lots of people I knew had heart attacks at work. Definitely when you're working like that, you're not exercising every day, you're not eating right. And it was getting really bad. So we fast forward from that moment, because I'm a slow learner, John. I didn't learn my lesson at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at this work conference and I'm drinking. By this point in the morning, it's a 2-day conference where you have to physically be at this conference. You can't escape. There's no escaping unless you're managing some critical work. So we're all at this work conference, and the speaker comes up, and he used to work in manufacturing, and now he's a director of construction, and he's presenting on these ideas of lean, stuff that you and Doug know and played with. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching him, and I'm drinking my coffee, like my 13th cup of coffee, and I noticed something. I was like, this guy is like wide awake. This guy's not tired. He's not stressed. And then he has his team. His team comes up and they're talking about some of the things that they're doing. And every single person on that team was strikingly happy.
Hmm.
And I looked around the room and I was like, there's no other person in this, audience of like 500 people that looks like that. I was like, I want that. I want that. So I bum rushed him after his talk and I said, how can I get like this, with my 15th cup of coffee in my hand, because I could barely stay awake, having worked so many hours. I put in a full day
Mm-hmm.
by the time we got to Wednesday, or a
Sure.
full week's work. And he said, the way to get into this, he's like, we actually have a team and we read a book. We're reading a book. I was like, reading a book? John, I hadn't read a book since I graduated from college. It had been like 10 years. So I read a book. It's called Lean Thinking: How to Banish Waste in Your
Mm.
Corporation or Your Organization by Womack and Jones. And then that leads to me joining the committee, and it leads to me reading books regularly.
Which, by the
Amazon.
way, is right there.
No, you got it right there. Yeah.
Yeah, there it
Amazon
is.
recommended me Jeff Sutherland's book, Scrum, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time. I consumed that book. And now this is after 2 or 3 years of practicing lean in construction. And I read Jeff's book, start reading it on a Wednesday, finish it by Friday because I have a commute into LA, and I start using it that weekend. I test it with my son, who at the time was like 3 or 4 years old, and it worked. It worked on this kid, and I thought, oh, it's working on this belligerent kid. Like my kid, he's very independent, and I was like, if it can work with this kid, it can work with anybody. So I went, still working on Sunday, John. I went to a home improvement store, got a whiteboard, hung it in my office on Sunday, set my Kanban Scrum board up,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all I did. And then I went home and I told my wife, I was like, I'm going to try this out. And within a month, not even a month, less than 4 weeks, I had doubled my productivity. And then I thought, okay, this is so good. I talked to my team, and they wanted nothing to do with it. They wanted nothing to do with it. And I said, I don't care. I've doubled my productivity. You don't want to do it? That doesn't matter. I'm going to still do it anyway. So I just kept doing it through the whole project. That job finished a month ahead of schedule. We had 0 claims, and that was, according to the owner's rep, unheard of. They'd never had a project end with no claims ever, and they had been the CM owner's rep on that campus for over 12 years, and this was the first time. And one of the owners asked me, he's like, we could tell like it felt different on your job as compared to the other ones on the campus. Like,
Wow.
what was the difference? And I was like, I think it probably looks like attitude, but in reality, I'm using this framework called Scrum. And I just kept using it. I kept trying it in different places. And at that time, I was a project manager. So I was using it as a project manager. The funny thing, John, is that it got me so effective. I could be in the field half the day. Half the day, I could just be on site in the field. And so I was using that time to learn more how things come together, learning from the trades, experienced people, running work, continue to develop my leadership skills. And then I've been using Scrum everywhere. And then some years later, I published my own book about Scrum called Construction Scrum, which is over my right shoulder,
There you
right
go.
there, next to Elmo.
Next, Elmo.
Next to Elmo.
Felipe, phenomenal, um, Way first you used it to help solve a personal problem, okay, in terms of understanding. Then you helped your 4-year-old utilizing a tool like Agile Scrum. You've consumed it. The story about not reading a book. I think you and I have a lot in common from that standpoint, and that I got out of college and said I'm never reading a book again. I was a mechanical engineer, not electrical engineer. And then it was about 6 or 7 years later when I had a mentor give me a leadership book for the first time, and I was hooked. So the
What book was that?
and the concept of uh, Scrum, the concept of your board that you set up there for those listeners who are in who may not know what Agile or Scrum is. Maybe at a very high level, I say this high level, but put it on some simple words for us. What is Agile and Scrum, and how does it relate to Lean and Lean manufacturing?
Yeah, let me start with Scrum and Agile together. Scrum is older. It was invented in the mid 90s. And then Agile came later. 2001, a group of people got together in Snowbird, Utah at a resort, and they were joined together by one common thing. The way software development is being done is terrible. It's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And they created this thing called the Agile Manifesto, which is a series of 4 values and a set of principles, which I believe are 12. I think it's 12 or 14. I don't have them all memorized yet. I know a couple of them from memory, but it's something that even I study and reread often, John. So Agile comes later. And one of the people at this manifesto that's working on this problem of how software is developed is Jeff Sutherland, who later becomes one of my mentors.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, and you can read about Agile more, but for people, it's a mindset. So these people came together to solve a problem, and ultimately they came up with a series of principles and a series of 4 values. And if you put them into practice, and you can put them into practice regardless of contract type, you can even put them into practice in your family to some degree. You just have to substitute the word software for product, and product can be a service or a thing. And you can look at even how we relate to each other in our family is, in service of others. So you definitely, with a little bit of synonyming, that's a made up word, you can have agile in all that you do. So the mindset is that you can adapt and make changes based on what reality is. I mean, that's in the essence. In the essence, agile with the capital A is just like agile with the small a, which, you should be thinking adaptability, you should be thinking experiencing, using all your senses. And then the values, like they have one, excuse me, one of the values is that we value, oh man, I'm gonna have to pull up the exact value because I don't want to butcher it, for sake of
Sure.
gonna jump it up real quick on the internet here because I have that capability. So one of the first ones is this first value is super interesting, John, because this, like, I think it ties in nicely what we've been talking about. And the first value is that individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And the reason, if you studied Toyota, which I know you have, and I know probably some of your audience has as well. In Toyota they have this model called the 4 Ps, and it's philosophy first, then people. And if you peel that back, and then there's like some other P's I'm not going to mention the next two, but the people have the philosophy, the people have the mindset, the belief structure. And in Agile, they have that same type of thinking they brought in that first value. Like everything that people are going to do to get work done, or how they come together, is going to happen through them and how they think and believe. And so the individual people are more important. Not to say that processes and tools aren't important, because they certainly are. And the values are very clear that they say, the things on the right are important, but the things mentioned first are priority. So people first. People first. So I think that's powerful. And then for Scrum, so that's Agile. It's a set of values and principles. Scrum is a system of getting things done. It could be a delivery system or a decision-making system, or both, depending on where you're using it. If you're early in design and product development, it's a great decision-making system because it brings forward decisions and it's good at prioritizing and breaking work down. And it's also a delivery system because if you're in the mix of now you're making something like a building, you can take any type of work. Most of the work we do in construction, with the exception of people actually putting things together, it's knowledge work, and knowledge work
Mm.
is mostly invisible. So Scrum is a highly visual way to make things visible, put organization, break things down, get really clear on what you're going to deliver, and then deliver it. And it has like this, it only has three roles: Scrum Master, Product Owner, and the team, the developers. And so I'm trained as a Scrum Master. And then I also, and construction Scrum is written from a Scrum Master's perspective. And it's highly focused on you, the collective, you, whoever's listening, you being the Scrum Master of yourself and helping your team to deliver. So it's very focused on delivering, very focused on delivering. And it's a great container. Like it's got very few rules, and we can get into those rules if you want to, if it's interesting for the audience. But like one of the rules is that you break your work down small enough so that at the end of a cycle, and you decide how long your cycle is, typically a week to 4 weeks.
Mhm.
You pick one and you stay with it. Like my podcast runs now on a 4 week cycle. In previous years, it used to run on a 2 week cycle, but now I've extended it to run on a 1 month cycle, which means shows recorded, edited, worked on, social marketed, published. All of that happens in less than a month, right? And then we iterate. So like we get feedback from, like we got a show that went live at the beginning of this month. We're recording this now in February. Just had a show that John has threatened to ask me questions about. That show was recorded in the summer of last year.
Wow.
But the feedback, we close the feedback loop once it gets exposed to the wild, which is where we get audience questions and answers. And then that feedback we take, put it on the board, and carry it into future shows, future questions, future marketing, how we talk to guests. Like there's an evolution of how I interview my guests over time. John was a podcast guest last year on my show. His show will go live probably within a week or two of this interview going live. So you're in for a treat, audience. You're going to get to hear
That's
both.
right. Double
Extend.
dose. Felipe, I love the explanation in terms of one, it comes across as very, uh, I'll use the term simplistic, not simple, and but don't mistake simple with easy as we go forward. You and I have some mutual connections in the electrical construction world. And one of the things that we know is that generally when you go and visit a job site that's being done and you've seen one job, you've seen one job. There's so much variation in the activity that goes on. And your point about visual is we know that visual is generally not being used enough as well. So the opportunities for this system and this methodology to be used to improve the success rate is just unreal in terms of how big the opportunity is. So what are the barriers that get in people's way of getting started when it is that simple?
Yeah, it is. It's incredibly simple. Like, so in Jeff's Red Book, which is a big explanation of why Scrum is and how it came to be, which is called Scrum, the Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time by Jeff and JJ Sutherland. Father and son duo wrote that book. He doesn't even tell you how to do Scrum until you get to the appendix of the book. The whole purpose of that book is because Jeff got tired of answering why Scrum works so well, which is pretty hilarious. And like I know
Mhm.
a lot of people, John, read a book and then might not even go to the appendix. They might not turn past that last chapter.
Right.
It was only by chance I got to that last chapter, and it's the framework is so simple, like John is saying, that it can sit on a single 8.5 by 11. All the rules for Scrum are so few and so simple, it sits on a single page. Now the book is not 8.5 by 11 size; it's 2 pages. This index. So if you're like looking through the book and you're like, Felipe, it's on 2 pages. Listen, put an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper on top of those 2 pages, and those 2 pages fit inside of it. It's that simple. So it's only 11-ish or 12 steps, thereabouts, depending on how you implement it. And putting it into practice has lots of barriers. Like I was mentioning to John, either before we recorded or in the beginning of the show, when I first started using Scrum, I was on a hard bid project, and the team wanted nothing to do with it. The team did this thing, and this is where a lot of you are listening to the show. You're going to get yourself in trouble. People will just Google something, they'll search, they'll look at the first couple of results, and they'll just read, and then their phone rings or an email pops or somebody walks into their office, and then they never look at this ever again. And I don't know what you're going to find when you search this, because how you search matters. How you search matters. So I would highly recommend, when you can, always go to first sources, first principles as often as you can. Don't play telephone game. Today there are over 100,000 different companies that teach Scrum, and there's variation in how they teach it and what the audience is. So I've learned how to adapt it for construction. So my book, Construction Scrum, is focused on people in design and construction. So if you're an IT person, my book is not necessarily for you. If you're in education, my book is maybe not necessarily for you. But my book is an example of taking some very domain specific solution, translating it into language that people in the construction industry easily understand, and going after it. And then, John, because I'm so sensitive to bad searches, I made my favorite chapters of the book free. So if you want to just even listen to the Scrum Guide, there's an audio chapter 9 on my podcast at the EBFC Show. If you go to the ebfcshow.com and in the search bar, just type chapter 9, you will get the free chapter of my Scrum book, which is me reading the Scrum Guide with construction audio commentary. So you can hear the translations from what it originally was for software into the construction industry. That's one of the things that Jeff Sutherland said is like one of my talents, like the ability to translate. So don't just search it, get it, get understanding of what it is. The Scrum Guide is free. Scrumguides.org is the website to read the Scrum Guide for free. And I've got links from my book website. That's the first link on my book website on the book resources, is go read that Scrum Guide for free. I tell people, like, I want you to read it for yourself. And it's available in over 30 languages. So you can read it in your native language and then try it. Actually try it from start to finish. And then John, because I got so many, I get questions like this all the time, John. I created a free 30-minute Scrum course on my website. So if you go to the ebfcshow.com and click on store, you can take my free, no obligation Scrum course, 30 minutes or less, and it'll have you doing Scrum by the end of 30 minutes. And it's a good primer and a start. It's that simple. You could get started. And I just published a new blog post recently, John, where someone took the free course and then used it and improved their schedule by over 70%.
Wow.
Right.
Fantastic. Love hearing success stories like that too. I'll
Yeah.
make sure to put links in the show notes to both of
Yeah.
those,
Yeah.
both
But
the
like
video and the guide.
a lot of people stay academic on this, John. And I had a phone call with a friend from Germany. I got up at 4 a.m., John, to talk to somebody in Germany last week. So I've gotten my sleep since then. I'm fully recharged. And they were asking me all these questions. They work for a very large, big name company, and they were going to go work in construction and deploy Agile. They got hired in Germany to do Agile in a construction company there. And they're asking me, like, what are the pitfalls going to be? And I said, you cannot come at people like with a mind that you're going to teach them something. And I was just talking about teach yourself, like take this course. And it sounds like teaching, right? But it's actually, it's showing you, and onboarding you is more what it is. Onboarding you, because I don't know where you're starting, right? Everybody starts at a different spot. So I'm onboarding you. You're going to bring your skills with you to this practice, and it's a practice. And then you'll do the practice. You'll have your own story of, oh my goodness, I doubled my throughput. Like when I did as a project manager, it was exponential. I think I 5x'd my capabilities within a month. Whereas when I had just learned lean, I definitely doubled my productivity when I learned and applied lean, but I never got more than that, right? I had limits. And then with Scrum, I've broken through those productivity limits over and over and over again because of I think it's the rapid cycle of getting feedback and adjusting trajectory, but allows you to change much, much, much faster. I mean, not to say that you can't follow plan, do, study, act and get the same benefit. Scrum is built on top of that concept of that scientific management methodology of plan, do, study, act. It's built on top of that. So that's what makes the machine turn inside, in addition to a couple other cool values and rules.
No, I appreciate you. Even the rules, like you said, they are simple as you go forward. And I encourage folks to go out there and take advantage of these free resources that are there. And you touched on some of the things that are important inside of it. And it's people. And that generally is how you end up with some of the challenges, is because you're dealing with people. So it's not just laying it down and all of a sudden things go miraculous and go forward and really work. So just a couple more questions as I honor your time, Felipe, as we go forward. What are some tips then? What are some practical tips for folks to um, implement Scrum into their project planning methodology?
Yeah. So tip number one, when I studied construction teams and I've worked with owners, architects, engineers, designers, trade contractors, specialty contractors, even consultancies, and I've done some full blown agile transformations with those types of groups. And the first barrier that a lot of people have, not everybody, but a lot of people think, if I don't get the entire project to do this, the entire project is like the 300 people in the building plus the 200 support people plus the 100 design professionals plus the owner's rep. If I don't get everybody doing this, then I'm not doing Scrum. And that's wrong. That's an incorrect belief, and that's actually you creating a barrier to start, because you're putting up this barrier, like, if I can't get everybody to do it right away on day one, then I'm not doing it. And that's just false. That's not true. It's not how I started. And I went back to Jeff Sutherland, who's still amazing, still answers my questions and makes himself available for me. And Jeff's like, you don't need everybody to do it. He's like, you only need one person to start, and that's you. And that's how I started. And Jeff encourages that to this day. He even has you're gonna get a kick out of this, John. He even created a GPT for him, so that you can go to the ChatGPT's store and get Scrum Sage, which is Jeff's trained GPT to answer his questions. And
That's
I
so
even
fun. That's
asked,
great.
it's so funny. I told Jeff, like, I tried it out when he first published it, and I asked it that question, like, how do I get started? And it said the same thing Jeff says. You need to start. So just you. So I always tell people, like, put your arms out, and that's your sphere. That's your sphere of influence right now. It's at least you. When you close your arms back in, you're hugging yourself. So get
Hmm.
started, at least yourself. Do not create additional barriers to start, and start.
Love that. Just start. Don't overthink it. Don't wait. Get things going. I wanted to ask you a question because I think that just start is so important as well for us, again, as leaders, for us as individuals who want to continuously grow. And this is a philosophical question as we come toward the end with regards to who we are as individuals to get started, not just Agile Scrum, but overall how we get started. And there's a word that I've heard you use before. It's called changemaker. And what do you consider a change maker to be in this space to make that happen?
Yeah, change maker is any person. So first of all, as I define it, change makers, it's a noun. It's any person or people that make positive change. And it always starts with themselves first. You change yourself. And there's been tons of books written on this topic, and all change, from what I can see, starts with the gray matter between your ears first. When you
Hmm.
change your mindset, you change your thinking about something, everything else unlocks, changes, or shuts down. I mean, because you had the opposite is exactly true. So a change maker is somebody that changes themselves, takes a hero's journey, and starts to create positive changes, visible, measurable changes in their sphere of influence that's measurable. And so on LinkedIn, where I'm very active on LinkedIn, if I see somebody who's acting as a change maker, creating positive change, either individually for them, they're sharing, or greater in a greater service or in a leadership type of role, I'll reply and just put a hashtag change makers on them. And then so every time I see it and it pops, and I've watched there people, and the first second is actually the second live stream I ever did on LinkedIn. It's called a Change Makers live stream, and because I brought in like all these friends of mine that were making positive changes in the construction industry, and we just got together with for no money, for totally for free, and we just talked about how we're applying lean and the type of work we do. And it was a very, for me, a very inspirational show about how easy or difficult it is to make change. For some of the change makers, it's very difficult because, again, the change has to happen in your mind, and then for others, it can be easier. Some of the change makers are we're very stubborn. I'll say the we, because I'm in that stubborn category as well, John. And we will make change no matter what. We just need to be there, and change will be made.
Thanks for sharing that, Felipe. Fun story, fun question. You may or may not know where this question came from because I'd have never known where to get it. But is it true that a construction company from Hungary came all the way over to the US just to see you? I'm hearing this as a rumor.
This is I don't know that the rumor was to see me. I mean, that sounds really good, but they actually had done studying. So this is true. This is a company from Hungary called Market, and I think there might be one word after Market, but if you just put Market and Hungary, you'll find it. There've been some posts on LinkedIn where they did some appreciation posts and shared some of the story. And so they had an individual, they had a project, and it was with actually one of my friends, another changemaker, Janusz Deluy at BMW. So they had a BMW assembly line project, and Janusz brought through their contract and their process all these things that this company Market had never heard of. All these things being under the lean construction umbrella, right? So there's a whole set of principles and values and tools under lean construction, and this was just completely foreign to them. They had a company, I think they were like 25 years old, so a relatively new company. That's a long time, successful by all means.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, oh, we got to learn, like, what is this? The CEO made a commitment. He's like, they're having really good results in that project. It's a very different approach than what they're used to. So they made a key hire. They hired a person, and she started doing research and found my name comes up quite a bit when you start. Apparently, when you search lean construction, my name comes up quite a bit. And they also found the Bolt company, with the company that I work at as the project delivery services director. And so they found there's been a lot of white papers published about lean and experiments that Bolt has done at various different sites across the United States. They've been into lean since the 90s. They were one of the early founding members of the Lean Construction Institute,
Mm-hmm.
where I've been serving as a volunteer for almost 10 years now myself. And so they connected to Bolt through our website, and two connections later, it goes from IT to my friend Jenny Hahn, who works in Modular Group, to then me and my boss Nick, and everyone's like, Felipe is probably the best person to answer these questions because they were very beginner questions, and they know I'm like a sucker at answering questions. So that started a dialogue with this person, and then from there, they eventually said, "Can we tour? Can we tour and see your projects?" And I was like, I think so. I think Bolt's pretty open to that just based on the volume of research that's been done. And so we organized a trip, and we saw projects in Wisconsin and we saw projects in California. And so I was there as the guide, the liaison, to show them through all these different projects. And I organized on our side with a lot of help from a lot of great people inside of Bolt. We made an amazing experience for them. They brought executive leadership from various levels of their company. I think I might be losing count, John, but it felt like there was 25 people that
Wow.
they brought from Hungary. It's probably less than 25, but it just felt like 25. We were on a
Sure.
bus. Like there are times, John, where we were on this little bus, this little black limousine bus, and we're like driving around, different parts of Wisconsin and then here in San Francisco. And so it was an incredible experience to visit projects, and then projects to talk and answer questions that they have. And the most amazing thing is I've been a volunteer at LCI for over, let's just call it 10 years for easy rounding. The questions that they had are the exact same questions that new people to lean have, the same exact questions that I had when I was new to lean 15 plus years ago. And it's kind of nice to pay it forward and to help shepherd people onto a sustainable path. So fast forward, they've had I know their concrete production executive he grabbed it the hardest, and I heard from my contact over there that his group has had a complete transformation, and they've like blown all their KPIs out of the water with just a little bit of advice and guidance we gave them, which was also just do it, like pick something that you want to work on, pick a good problem, and then work on that problem using some of these tools and processes, and you'll be amazed at what happens. And it's a very like human centric style that we have, because in lean we have like two big principles. It's on my shirt too: respect for people and improvement. These are two foundational things, and depending on where you come at this from, you could be heavy on one or the other, rarely equal on both. But you study Toyota and how they deploy this, these are two equal foundational things that hold up the Toyota house, or the structure of all the other principles and processes that are contained inside.
Felipe Engineer, you've been a very gracious guest to share as much as you have. I'm going to make sure I put contact information for your podcast and the links that you talked about for your LinkedIn profile because folks are going to want to follow you and connect with you and to your book in the show notes. So those will all be there.
Thank you,
Felipe,
John.
I'm going to go ahead and finish you up with the last question. I always finish up all my first time guests and then give you a chance for the last word. And that's to say, I'm going to give you a billboard. You can put that billboard anywhere you want to. What's the message that you put on that billboard and why do you put that message on there?
Okay, so if I have a billboard, I'm going to put this billboard in a very prominent, probably highway into the city, into major cities, John. So that's the where, is I want it to be seen. And my billboard message is going to say human being. Human being is going to be like big bold letters. And below those letters saying, I am more than the labels I put on myself and the labels people put on me. And that's all I want people to see. And there's just going to be like no advertising, no marketing. I think in today's day and age, John, it is so important for us to self-actualize. And part of that self-actualization is to recognize that we are a human being. And it's so much more than the job that we do, than the roles we have in our families. And so I invite through that billboard everyone to put themselves on the journey to self-actualization and become a fully functional, complete human.
Amen, brother. Felipe, thank you again. I wish you the best. Let's stay in touch, okay?
Thank you, John. Will do.